Hi, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome to Unapologetically Females.
We wanted to create a fun, non-judgmental space where women can talk about their shared experiences.
Here we will normalize the challenges we face as females living in a society that dictates unrealistic and outdated expectations on what a woman should be.
Together, we hope to cultivate a supportive community of women who empower one another to courageously live unapologetically.
A quick disclaimer before we get started. Although Cindy and Danielle are licensed therapists, this podcast is not to be interpreted as therapy or a replacement of therapeutic services. It is strictly a conversation between two women about their experiences in the world. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to like and subscribe below. Also, follow us on all of our social media platforms at Unapologetically Females. With that being said, we hope you enjoy this episode.
So, today, we're talking about dun dun dun.
The perfect child. Because everyone thinks they have one.
Yeah. And the pressure to raise the perfect child, right?
Exactly. It comes both ways. Yeah, it's a two-way street. And a lot of children feel like they have to be the perfect child.
That's so real too. Yeah. I recently took a personality test, and I've taken lots of personality tests throughout my life. For many reasons. I mean, one, going to school for social sciences, and you know, when you go into to college and like your guidance counselor, you know, what it has you take one. It's like, these are the careers that will fit your personality. Which, let's just take a moment. 18 years old, taking a personality test. Like, who the hell do you think you are at 18 years old? You don't know.
I didn't know, but I thought I was pretty damn good.
Yeah. Exactly. So I took one recently, and it was the first time that I took a personality test that I was like, the results came back, and it was like, okay, you see me. Mm. And it was interesting because I think partially it had to do with that I know more of who I am than I ever have.
Right. The older we get, the more clear it becomes.
Right. So I'm like, okay, this is really reflective of who I am. But one of the things that it said about me and some of my traits are that I'm a perfectionist, along with other things. Mm-hmm. But I look back in childhood and how that perfectionism played out was in different ways. Like, I don't think that I was, because like my room wasn't always perfect. Like I was, you know, it was a disaster.
Maybe it was the things that people could see on the outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but like always striving, I think, to seek people's approval, even in certain things.
For sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That hit hard for me as a teenager because I had eating disorders growing up. And perfectionism really was at the root of that. Mm-hmm. And trying to be and also portray this perfect image when in reality my home life was a wreck. Yeah. I mean, you know, so I would say I probably had some perfectionism too, just not stemming from healthy places by any means.
So then when you had kids, how did that play out?
You know, I actually regret to an extent some of the ways that and some of the expectations I had on my firstborn, who miraculously turned out to be very, you know, stable and a good contribution to the world. She's an amazing person, but I was really hard on her.
Yeah.
As far as what I felt she needed to act like, be like, you know.
I feel like we need to acknowledge for you and for her, you and your husband, let's just say, congratulations. You guys just got your first college graduate under your belt.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
You made it.
I made it. We made it. We all made it. Yes. It was. Yeah. And that was surreal too. I don't think it was just last weekend. So a week ago, and it hasn't really hit home yet, you know. So super proud of her and the accomplishments. You know, she had a scholarship, she had all the things. She's just an amazing kid. Not because of me by any means or the things that I expected of her, just because I just said a few minutes ago, she came that way. So, but going back to how did that reflect on my parenting, I definitely expected more of my firstborn than my secondborn, because I think after the firstborn, I realized that, oh, we didn't break her. She is doing just fine. And she probably could have been happier in some situations where I maybe stole a little bit of that childhood joy in a way. I don't, spontaneity, freedom of just like letting loose. And kids, I now that I know what I know and that we've studied what we've studied, I know that kids should just be able to let loose and let those emotions fly and all the things. But I didn't, as a parent, I thought that was a reflection of me if I let that happen.
Yeah, that's so real. I think you hit it there, is like that. What do people think about me and how I'm parenting if my kid acts like a complete fool?
Totally.
Like,
Totally.
or acts like a child,
Yeah.
but in other people's eyes, it's like, I remember on a plane flight, and it was only from here to San Diego. So that was 45 minutes of our lives. But there was this woman traveling alone with 2 small children, and one of them was probably 3-ish, and then like an infant that she had, like she was the baby was in like a carrier strapped to her. And her 3-year-old-ish toddler, he was being a 3-year-old toddler boy and, jumping around and yelling. And she was just doing everything she could in her power to manage it and give him what, candy and what do you want? Like just trying. And I'm sure it was the pressure that she felt of everybody else around her, probably to control her son. And I remember at the very end of the flight when we're getting off, and everybody's getting, standing up, this older, I would say 60s gentleman, who was not a gentleman, turned around and said to her, when you give in to them, that just perpetuates the behavior. So you should, and like proceeds to tell her next time how she should parent. And I remember looking at her and she was frozen because
that's awful.
I wanted to say for her, go fuck yourself.
Right.
Sir.
Yeah, you try being this woman by herself with a toddler on a plane.
Yeah. And she was just frozen. And I remember looking at her and I just said, like, don't listen to him. Like, he doesn't get it. But it was just so, like, how privileged are you, sir, to be able to turn around and say that to a woman traveling alone and have no repercussions
and
for
also,
it.
why are we expecting toddlers to behave in the same way as adults on an airplane? That may have been a new experience for that child, and who is probably definitely not in their normal environment. And now all of a sudden we're, adding cabin pressure and people and stairs and noises and
all this stimuli,
rules.
like
but then strict rules of, okay, don't pay attention to that stimuli. Don't do anything about it. Sit still, just like we are as adults, and don't move.
Right.
And if you don't, then everyone else around us is going to be judging you and me.
Exactly. It's such a, the pressures are that are coming in from everywhere, self-imposed and external, all the time.
I do have a background. For listeners to know, I have a background in teaching, ran an in-home daycare for a few years to stay home with my kids. So I have experience with little boys, but I did not raise one myself. So hats off to all of you with all that little boy energy.
It's been a vastly different experience between my 2 kids, I will say that. And they're very different people. Like, I just have very different individuals.
So do I. Yeah, for sure.
So I think part of the pressure, like my daughter, for example, she's very much, she reminds me a lot of myself. And so, which kills me because I want her to be better than me,
Totally.
I want her to not feel the need to please people. It took many years for me to not to not be a people pleaser. And I still I still have to fight that urge. I feel like I've come, I think with age and with experience and maturity and growth and all the things, it's gotten way easier. And
I have to say, from a personal point of view, you're way better at it than I am at knowing who you are and what you stand for and standing up for that. I mean, that is one thing that really impresses me about you. When we go and we look at the definition of perfectionism, it's very confusing, I think, when we look at, because you said you wanted better for your daughter. I want better for my kids and for your son, obviously, as well. And I want better for mine, too. But, I don't like the word but, and.
me either.
I mean, out of context. But what does that mean? What does perfectionism mean? Are we redefining perfection? Are we redefining what a little girl should stand for, look like, how she should behave, how she should act? A little boy as well. Are we redefining what perfectionism looks like for children?
Right.
Or are we not? It's really confusing, And is there a difference between when I raised my kids and when you raise your kids? Now that you're raising your kids, even just 20 years ago, did it look different than it does now? I would venture to say that it does.
So being in the professions that we're in, we see parents who they want to, they're getting their kids support, and they, are getting their kids in sessions for therapy to process or to work through certain things. A lot of times it's behavior related. Right. And expectations of parents and navigating that to really understand what is a age appropriate, healthy expectation of, certain ages and kids in general. And I think a lot of times I hear, well, when I was a kid, all
the time, and it's so different now.
Well, even from our genetics, like if you throughout time, how trauma can affect your genetics and the makeup and how that passes on into our children when we're carrying them and what that means. And also I didn't have a cell phone till, I'm of the era of, I used to have a pager.
Yeah.
So I had a pager, and I would, if my parents paged me, I'd go to a payphone and I would call them collect because I never had quarters. Yeah.
So do you accept a phone call from? I guess so.
Yeah. It's so. So it was it wasn't a constant accessibility to a screen and then add on social media. So now, what are those called? Smartphones. I swear I'm not a dinosaur.
I sit here and laugh, yet I'm much older than you.
So then add the layer of a smartphone and social media, and it's the way that our brains developed versus the way our children's brain develops, and the level of hormones that are pouring through our kids because of the external influences of social media and the dopamine rush that you're getting from your likes and your followers and all, the validation you get from the comments and all of the things. It's like we're playing a totally different game, or they're playing a totally different game. So it's so hard, when parents start with that, when I was a kid, or when I hear somebody make a comment that they lead with that statement. It's like that statement is irrelevant now.
Right.
It is completely irrelevant.
Right. But you make a really important point of when parents say, oh, back in my day, I did. So that's their idea of perfection.
Right.
Where our children now are seeing their own idea of the perfect child. If I'm the perfect child, then I should look like this. I should have this many followers. I should, many of them are saying I should have a 4.5 GPA and be going to the top college and, varsity this and or, have the lead in the play or the solo in the choir. Or, I mean, all of these expectations that really social media and society is putting onto them. And then as adults, we're stuck back in the dark ages, pre-smartphones and social media and all of that, and our idea of what the perfect child is or what we should be conveying through our children to the world.
Right.
So it's really, it's a crossroads, really, there's a very, and so then I guess my question would be, is it harder for right now in the time that we're at to raise well-adjusted children given our core beliefs or our core, beliefs of what parenting should look like, of what the perfect child should look like?
Yeah. I mean, I just had a conversation with one of my girlfriends who has a daughter that is 5 or 6 months older than my daughter. So they're, about the same age. I was talking to her because my daughter this year has had, some challenges in the last few months. And we lost my father-in-law in February. And she had a close relationship with him. It was, I would say, the first person who she had built a bond with and a consistent relationship with, that she's formed memories around, that she's had to grieve.
And let's just remind everyone, she's 7.
She's 7.
To put it into context.
And so that really, rocked her world. Like, it really she didn't know how to process it, and still is trying to figure that out. And we're helping her through that. He wrote her a letter before he passed that she still isn't ready to read. And so she has kind of how that's presented in the grief that she's gone through since February was, school was really challenging. She didn't want to go to school. She really withdrew. She was tired a lot, and so.
Which is what happens to us as adults
right.
when we grieve, right?
My immediate, mom response was, I have to fix this. How do I fix this? And my body, I felt it in me. Like, I reached out to you. I remember it was like I was in panic mode.
And in pain for your child.
Right. Yeah. And so being in that, oh my gosh, how do I make this better right now? Like, I don't want her to feel this for too long.
Right.
And being a therapist, knowing let's lean into the feelings, and she's got to feel it to move through it. I know all of those things, and yet in that moment, it was so quick and easy to go into fix it. I have to make this right now for her.
And let me challenge you on that and ask, was it that 99% of it was you wanted her to feel better and you wanted her to not feel that pain? Was there any part of you as a parent that was like, I don't want her to miss school, miss out on what's going on in school, not be, not be included at school?
All of
it.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, it was all of it. I wanted,
you'd want things to be quote unquote normal. I didn't want her to feel, left out at school or unsafe at school. And it affects her, even in her activities, all of it, her sports and, there was one, I remember she had a soccer game shortly after that on a Saturday, and it was like she just was kind of mopey out there and just like, like. And then the parent in us is like, come on,
exactly,
get out there, come on, you can do it,
exactly,
score that goal.
Exactly.
Get over it, not get over it, but in a way, you're like, you're projecting
fake
that
it till you make it,
exactly.
and all of me knows that that's not okay,
right.
So I had to definitely check myself. I think my husband and I had to have some, tough conversations of how to support her, how to help her work through a lot of this. And we're still doing that. Like it hasn't been a short road by any means. She's also highly, highly aware of her feelings and the people's feelings around her. She's
an old soul.
She's an old soul. She has the vocabulary of a 60-year-old, which on
really does.
some days it's like,
Yeah.
what did you just say to me? Like, and so I've really had to stretch myself to embrace it and not try and hinder that in her, to empower her when she, there's balance. She is 7. Right. So there's balance.
However, and my first is a very old soul and was very mature for her age and still is. And so I know what that's like to try and parent a child who isn't necessarily amongst their peers as far as, cognitive development and also social development and social empathy, social cues, social intelligence.
Yeah.
And mind you, I'm not calling my child a genius by any means.
Yeah. Right.
Both of my children are amazing in different ways, but my first was definitely an old soul and could have a conversation with an adult at age 5, no problem, where, most kids at age 5 can't do that.
Right.
So then,
they prefer to have at 5, they prefer to have the conversation with an adult versus another 5-year-old.
Yes.
I mean, the feedback we've always been given since our daughter was in preschool, now into first grade, was that, at playtime or at recess, she's talking to the teacher.
Right. We wish that she would spend more time with her peers so that she could be age appropriate. I totally get it. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
And then, you wonder too, talking about the perfect child, does that child feel more pressure to be quote unquote perfect because they're answering to adults more than they are to their peers? Is it more carefree to be amongst the other 5-year-olds doing 5-year-old things versus trying to please, in a way, adults?
Yeah.
Or live up to adults' expectations.
Right.
I would say maybe healthy 5-year-olds don't really care. They're not looking around thinking, oh, that adult might be thinking I'm doing something wrong or saying something wrong. Whereas some children are hyper aware of that. And
I have to remind myself of that a lot with our daughter, because I'm like, she wants to please me so much. She seeks my approval. And I really have to check myself and how I parent her to go like, it's okay that, we were just having this conversation yesterday. I'm like, I'm so frustrated because I've now said to, put the scooter away and take it out of the middle of the living room 10 times and it's still there. And I get frustrated, and then she's like, I'm sorry, Mom. And I'm like, oh,
that's not the response
I know.
Or wanted.
Right.
I didn't mean to make you feel bad.
Yeah. And also, like, you're a child and you're not going to listen on the first cue every single time. And it's unfair
for me to expect that of you. However, you are a very mature child, so sometimes I lose track of how old you are.
Yes.
And speak to you like you should know your shit.
Right, yeah. And so, my husband and I, we don't get it right every day. That's for sure.
Not the truth.
And we're, she's a different child to parents than our 2-year-old who we
could learn a lot from your 2-year-old.
He just, doesn't give a shit about anything.
Yeah.
Like, that is the consistency of my updates on him. When I, give an update on my son to the family, the caption always reads, "Still gives no shits."
Yep.
And then I just support that with pictures of him not giving a shit.
we could all go through life that way.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's more my second child as well. Like, she's a very empathetic, caring, wonderful person. And she gives less shits than most of us about what other people think.
Yeah.
And that's fabulous.
Oh, so freeing.
So freeing.
So freeing.
Yeah.
He's just living a party all the time, living life as a party. Like, and I'm like, if I could not care like you, like he jumping off a couch, you know.
I mean, I could stand to jump off a couch.
Right?
Give me a good weekend.
You throw on some music, he's up for a dance party.
Yes,
you know, he's yelling into the Alexa the other day, and Alayla! Alayla, music! And I'm like, and she somehow understands him. So go
that's
figure.
a whole nother podcast.
Right. Right. All the things that are listening to us on a daily basis.
Exactly.
But yeah, I just think that we have this just such pressure to be so perfect every time, to raise these perfect kids, for these kids to be perfect. And I don't know, I just feel like at the end of the day, all of us are doing the best we can.
Yep.
Trying to suck a little less each day, trying to fuck up our kids a little less each day. And some days, I know I get it wrong all the time.
Same.
I think one of the biggest things is the recovery.
How you recover. That's where the answer lies. So I think maybe when you look at it, the answer to the perfect child is every child is perfect in a different way. Or we treat them as perfectly perfect in a different way. One of the things, you and I do a lot of work with teens and kids, and the top thing that I hear from kids is, I don't want to be a burden on my parents. Or I don't want, you mentioned this, they don't want to upset their parents.
Yeah.
That is their number one. And every child across all socioeconomic boundaries, which we've touched on many of them in our practices, every single one just wants to please their parents. They don't want to be a burden on them. So imagine feeling that need to be the perfect child, and then constantly knowing that you never want to disappoint, upset, burden your parents. I mean, the pressure has got to be really, really hard. And I think as parents, remembering that and remembering where, their point of view, where they're coming from, would make a huge difference in the way that we parent as a society.
Yeah. There's so much there that you just said where it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, there's just a lot of opportunities throughout our kids' lives, throughout our lives, where we're just trying to get it right. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and on our children to try and get it right. And I feel like, I think one of the things that the great Maya Angelou, her quote of, if you know better, when you know better, do better. And so throughout, all of my education and experience and learning about human development and learning about the brain and learning about behaviors and all of the things, I've really, really, really strived to apply that in how I parent. And like I said, I probably get it wrong more than I get it right.
It's a learning curve for us just as much as it is for them.
But I do have, 2 kids who are loved immensely, a daughter who is very articulate. And when I do get it wrong with both of them, I've tried to be at least incredibly intentional in apologizing.
Yes, it's okay. It's important.
Yeah,
for
owning
us
my
to
shit.
Own our shit and
Owning
apologize.
it in an appropriate way.
Right. Right.
And so, and not burdening them with like, and this is what I'm going through, or these are all the things just saying, I was wrong. Yeah. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I shouldn't have raised my voice. I am so sorry. Something that I've really, a phrase that I continue to reiterate to both of them, but my daughter obviously understands more than my 2-year-old, but you are not responsible for mommy's feelings.
Yeah.
At all.
At all.
You're not responsible for how I feel, how I behave.
Yes, that's so important.
And so that's something when I'm trying to repair, what I've done, and apologize and be vulnerable and be real. I always tell them that is like, you're not responsible for me. And that's my own shit. Like I have to figure that out. I need to do the work. My body's telling me something,
Right.
And it's not my kid's burden to bear, or to please me, to appease me so I don't, fly off the handle. Like we're all going to at some point. We're all going to lose our temper.
Absolutely. Because we have so much love and admiration and so much invested in them that those strong emotions are at some point going to create foul
Yeah.
foul activity or ways of, handling things.
Right.
Because it's intense.
Yes, intense. What a great word to describe parenting. Question, you have 2 girls that aren't, how many years apart are they?
3.
3.
Almost exactly.
So raising 2 girls fairly close in age, that have very different personalities. Yeah. How did that look and the pressure that you felt of raising the perfect child? How did that look for you to balance that between them? Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. Because I was the second child. I was very more in tune with my second child of how it feels to have an older sibling who everyone views as, the brightest, the one that has their shit together. And then along came the second child and feels like she has to live up to that, measure up to that, be that same person. So trying to parent her in a way of saying, hey, that's her, that's she's doing her life. You need to do your life and be who you are. And you're fabulous as well. And here's all the great, things that you can do, can be, are currently.
Did you ever feel like you had to overcompensate with one of them?
That's a great question. Yeah, at times.
Yeah.
At times.
Because I feel that way all the time.
Yeah. No, for sure. I definitely feel like I was more sensitive to how my younger one was feeling because of all the attention my older one got.
So my children are 5 years apart, and my daughter had 5 years as an only child, and she remembers that. Yeah. So although she loves her brother most days, I would say every day she loves him.
She doesn't always like him.
She doesn't always like him. Yeah. And she will tell you if someone's like, do you like being a big sister? She'll straight up say no with no hesitation. He turned her world upside down.
Sure.
And so that has been, I think I overcompensate for that often. And now I'm raising 2 only children, essentially.
Right. No, don't they say 5 years
is
when you become an only child again? It's 5 or 7. I don't know. One of those. I'm not good with numbers, but it's something like that.
Okay.
But you make a great point about how that muddles also your presentation to the world of what a perfect family looks like, right? Yeah. Like you want these 2 children that love each other and get along and we can go on family vacations and everything's great and, they hug each other at the bus stop and blah, 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 right? No. Yeah. That's just not reality. Yeah. Yet that's what we strive for. And so when our children say, no, I don't like being an older sibling, or no, this is hard for me because I liked being an only child, that just like throws it on its axis. Like, okay, wait a minute. This isn't how it was supposed to look. I was supposed to have this second human being for you to play with for the rest of your life and to love and to, have great Christmas card photos with. right?
Exactly.
And now it's like, whoa, nope.
Yeah.
That's not what.
Yeah, all of it. And I've noticed when my daughter's having a hard day, the go-to a lot of times, like he's a trigger for her. And so that can be hard too. But I will say I'm grateful, like we're 2 years in.
Yep.
And right now we're on a good streak of them playing together, of her really adoring him and loving him.
Yeah.
But when he's having a tantrum every 2 seconds, because because the color of his water bottle is wrong.
Right.
Right. She's having a tough day. That's frustrating for her, which I get. Like it's frustrating for me
Totally.
too.
Totally. But we don't like it when they act that way.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they feel that, and then it just all
the emotions, all of it. We're
it
all
all
working
spirals.
through. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's an interesting experience we have. With the raising of such a widespread in their ages, and so.
And maybe, going back to the topic of this, raising the perfect child, maybe we as parents need to open up the conversation and ask our children, what do you feel that? Mm-hmm. And how do we do this together?
Yes, invite them to share that. That's the biggest. That's huge. I feel like that alone is so empowering to a child and can really change the dynamic of your relationship in a positive, powerful way. For a long time, that just opening the door for that conversation, I think a lot of times my daughter hears, well, you got 5 years alone with your parents but you got all of the attention for 5 years, because she'll say one of her things is he gets all the attention, and it's like,
It requires more attention.
but people will say that to her, and I've had to take a step back, because I would say I've probably said that to her too. And that's not fair, because it's like she didn't ask to have 5 years alone. And also this is her experience. Like it does feel like whiplash. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
To
and
her.
that's a great point. Remembering what their experience is versus what our experience or our expectations are.
Right. So I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, here we are again, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I will say thank God for girlfriends.
Yes.
Right? Because we can compare our stories and make each other feel normal. And
yeah, I have a friend who has 3 kids. She went to school to be a teacher. She was a kindergarten teacher until she started having kids. And I'm like, she's somebody I look at and I'm like, she was like put on this planet to be a mom. And I remember connecting with her one day, and we were together with our kids, and it was like she had had it. It was a lot. And I just remember where she was at, and her responses, and I just remember feeling so validated. Like, you were put on the planet to be a mom. I'm over here winging it every day.
Right. And you're having a hard time.
And
thank you for sharing with me.
Exactly.
Right? Thank you for being real.
Yes.
And, showing that even for you, this is hard.
Yes. So we're all in this together.
We are.
We're all figuring it out day by day. We all fuck up.
Yep. And there is no perfect.
There is no perfect. I feel like that's the good message to end on, right?
Message. There is no perfect.
There is no perfect.
Yep.
So tomorrow we'll wake up and try it all over again. See if we can get it a little bit better every day. Every day.
Yeah, and maybe ask for more feedback.
Yes. Ask for more feedback. Create a safe space for your kids to be kids.
And to know
to
that,
collaborate.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's going to be safe. Like, it's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right. Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
I'm Danielle.
I'm Cindy.
We'll see you next time.